Good morning, rock stars, and welcome back to String and Story. My name is Holly and Knight, and it is my job to guide you to quote with confidence. Welcome to the back room of String and Story on Main. This feels a little bit like Santa's workshop right now because we have been busy packaging up and shipping out all of your orders. Thank you so much for all of you who have been shopping with us already this holiday season. Today is Small Business Saturday. And when you shop with us and you support our small business, you're very literally making dreams come true. You're providing jobs. It means a lot to my family, to those who work at String and Story and their families, and you're making a very tangible difference. I just want you to know that every time you shop with us, your name gets hollered and blessed, and we are excited. And there's a big celebration every time we see one of those emails come through. So if you have not had the opportunity to check it out already, for Black Friday through Cyber Monday, we are having a sale, 25% off all of our fabric patterns, notions. Go check it out. Go plan your next project. If you have any questions about fabric or anything like that, you can always reach out via email. All right, there's my shameless opening plug. Let's get started for 3 myths about quilting with rulers. I can't resist an opportunity to come on here and shout about how fabulous y'all are and just the amount of support we've received already this holiday season. We're just really grateful. Y'all are the top of our thankful list every year. Now, those of you who are with me live or on the replay, do take a moment to say hi in the chat. I would love to greet you by name, tell you good morning. Let me know where you're tuning in from, what time it is for you. It is 11 o'clock here on the East Coast. I am starting my morning coffee. We can all take a moment to be slightly horrified that I'm just now drinking coffee. Hopefully it hits quick. Oh, right after I burn my tongue. Right there on camera. Here we are. All right. So I'll be sipping on that slowly since it's apparently still very warm. But let's dive into 3 myths about quilting with rulers. I'm really excited about this masterclass because this Ruler Quilting Academy is open for enrollment. We put together this program to really talk about some of the things that I wish I had better understood when I was first curious about learning how to quilt with rulers. There are some myths that exist that made me resistant to learning how to quilt with rulers, to understanding how beneficial learning how to quilt with rulers could be to my quilting practice. So I want to bust some of these myths for y'all today. And if you are curious about quilting with rulers, if you're excited about quilting with rulers, make sure that your questions are answered, that you feel set up for success. And hopefully see you on the inside of Ruler Quilting Academy, which we'll talk about at the end of our time together. Good morning, Eva in West Texas. It is wonderful to see you. I am so thrilled that you are here. All right, the rest of y'all jump into the chat. Alicia, hello. How are you, my friend? Happy Thanksgiving. All right, keep those chats coming as I click on through my slides. So in my experience as an educator, our brains really love to freak out about new stuff. We tend to perceive those things as hard. We resist our own ability to learn. I see this a lot with free motion quilting, and I've seen it with quilting with rulers as well. So today we're going to debunk some of the myths that may be leaning into these narratives of like, is this too hard for me to learn? Are we sure that I can figure this out? And like I said, at the end of our time together, we are going to talk about Ruler Quilting Academy. Now, if you are new around here, as I mentioned, my name is Holly Ann Knight. I've been teaching since 2017 and have watched thousands of quilters just like you grow in their confidence to finish their own quilts through my blog, workshops, and digital courses. And that includes masterclasses just like this one. Offline, I'm married to the hubster. He's the cutie in the navy in this photo. And we have 2 boys. Ian is sitting on my lap here, and Jem is right behind me. We have our dog, Havana, who is often here in the shop, 2 cats and a fish tank at home. So if I'm not at the shop, if I'm not quilting, if I am not teaching live like this, you can probably find me hanging out around downtown Duluth, going for a run, riding my Peloton, all of those good things. Now, as I mentioned, our shop, we do have String and Story on Main. This is our shop that we opened about 18 months ago. And this was really born out of the desire to create a fuller experience for our quilting rock stars. So those of y'all who've been taking classes with me for a while, to have better access to the supplies that we use in class, to offer machines that we love with our Burnett sewing machines, to offer a space to have in-person classes, to have in-person retreats. And we are just absolutely loving it. So if you are in or near Duluth, Georgia, passing through at any point, we would love to see you. Please come visit. We're right on Main Street, and you can honestly make a lovely little day of it in Duluth with our restaurants and shops here in town. So a bit of housekeeping as we jump into this. First of all, turn off all distractions. You've made the effort to be here. Really stay focused on your next steps to become a ruler quilting rock star. Also, use this as an excuse if you've got family knocking on the door, if you've got friends knocking on the door, you got kiddos knocking on the door, and it has been a busy few days and you just need a minute, right? Make me the bad guy. Holly Ann said, turn off all distractions. I am unavailable right now, right? For this next 45 minutes or so, you just get to have some peace and quiet. We get to talk quilting. I hope you're chain piecing something in the background while you're listening to me. And then the other thing is please be engaged and please ask all the questions. That's why the chat box is there. That's why I show up and do these workshops live, is because I want you to be able to get answers right away, to dialogue with me through that chat box, and to make sure that you're not leaving here with more questions than you started with, right? Chances are you've got a question or two floating around in your head already. That's why you're here, right? So let's make sure that we get those answered. Speaking of, go ahead and drop in the chat, like, what is your number one question or concern about quilting with rulers? Because I want to make sure that I hit those as we go through these myths so that you leave feeling empowered to take the next steps with ruler quilting. All right, so if you are a paper person or you just love to have a resource beyond our time together, go ahead and take out your phone, open up the camera, right? It's gonna look just like that. Open up your camera, point it at this lovely little QR code and see how this little yellow box pops up right at the bottom that says stringandstory.com. When that pops up, you're gonna tap it and it's gonna take you to the Quilting Rockstar digital education page, all right? Scroll down slightly, you'll see RQA right there at the top, and use these little arrows to go over to the Confident Ruler Quilting Workbook. All right, it's a totally free resource. Hit download, you'll put in your email. I will email you a copy. A lot of what we're going over today is included in that workbook. So if you are someone who is more of a visual learner, you're going to want to page through that and kind of ruminate on it to absorb this information. If you want to be able to refer back to stuff later, that's going to be your resource to make sure that the stuff we cover today goes with you beyond our time together. Okay. Ooh, so sorry if that made like a terrible hair crunching sound in my AirPod. We're going to move that off of the mic. There we go. All right. The biggest thing, if you take nothing else from our time together today, is I want you to know that you can and will be a ruler quilting rock star. And I'm going to show you a clear path to that during our time together today. And let's start by busting some myths, 3 myths about quilting with rulers. Little bit of background. What is a quilting ruler, right? I get asked this a lot. There's a lot of different types of rulers as quilters, right? When I first started quilting, I had a background in visual arts. So I had, one of those very fancy metal art rulers. And I thought I was very cool for having, not the $1 ruler from the school supply section that we all used in second grade to learn the difference between inches and centimeters. Like I had a nice metal art ruler. And then as I started quilting, I learned about rotary cutters. And people would say, use your ruler and your rotary cutter. And I was like, sweet. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Slapped my little art ruler down, went to go rotary cut, promptly jumped over the edge of that ruler and cut my finger. Okay. Because safety. And I knew nothing about safety. So I learned, okay, that ruler's too thin. They make special cutting rulers that help guide your rotary blade so that you don't cut your finger. Brilliant. Those tend to be about 1/8 of an inch thick. Okay, so we are all familiar with our cutting ruler, our 6.5 by 24, 8.5 by 24, our little squares, all the things, right? What is important to know about quilting rulers is that they are actually a little bit thicker. You can see this really well in this photo. Your standard quilting ruler, so not your cutting and measuring ruler, but your quilting ruler is going to be about 1/4 of an inch thick, all right? And that's because it is made to pair with a ruler quilting foot. Looks like a little donut. It's metal and it has 1/4 inch tall sides. All right. So think of these as kind of like the bumpers when you're bowling and you have your needle that is going up and down. And this ruler foot creates a little no-fly zone around that ruler, right? Or around that needle. So from your needle to the outside edge of your ruler foot is 1/4 inch in all directions. So you have a little 1/4 inch no-fly zone around your needle. And then your ruler is made to bump right up against that foot and it can't enter that no-fly zone. So that means we're not going to have chipped rulers. It means that, our fingers aren't going to get sewn, etc. So it's all a safety feature, right? To make sure that the needle is doing what the needle needs to do and the needle is not hitting your ruler or hitting your fingers. All right. So make sure that when you purchase rulers to quilt with, that they are in fact quilting rulers and they're not the same as cutting rulers. All right. Now, the next question that often comes up here is, well, what about shank height, right? high shank, low shank. I think FAFs have a slant shank, which is just nonsense. I don't know why they had to go make it complicated. When in doubt, when it comes to rulers, default to a high shank. Okay, unless you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are on a low shank machine and that it's really going to matter. Low shank quilting rulers are a little bit thinner, but for safety, I like to advise default to the high shank rulers. Now, for your foot, you're actually going to need to get the foot that fits your machine. All right, go to your local dealer, run a quick Google search. You will very quickly find a ruler foot for your machine. All right, so now that we have kind of our basic supplies, that foot and that ruler, let's bust some myths. Um, Oh, one more little background thing. What's really special about rulers is the precision that they give us, right? And I hear this talked about a lot with folks who are maybe learning how to free motion quilt and they haven't really gotten to a place where there's a lot of precision in their free motion. And they're like, are rulers a way for me to add more precision to my quilting? Absolutely, they are. All right. Crisp lines like this are next to impossible any other way when we're quilting, right? Even one of my things, for a long time was like, I have a walking foot. Some of these designs are really impractical to quilt with a walking foot because of the number of times you'd have to turn the whole quilt, right? So quilting with a ruler is a lot like free motion, that it allows you to move in multiple directions without shifting the quilt around, but to be able to do that while also getting precise geometric shapes like the ones drawn on this diagram. All right. Okay. Myth number one. I've been very excited to myth bust this whole time. I keep trying to jump ahead, right? Okay, slightly less hot that time. Myth number one, quilting with rulers is only for long arm quilters. False. Using a ruler is a practical necessity for many long armers, at least for things like stitching in the ditch and stitching clean diagonal lines. And because of that, long armers often arrive at a sense of necessity for ruler quilting sooner than folks who are maybe working on their domestic machine. But quilters on all machines can use rulers for steady lines and cool geometric shapes. All right. So when I first started quilting with rulers, it was because I had gotten my first long arm. And I learned very quickly, like, oh, I cannot stitch in the ditch. I cannot go on a clean diagonal without a ruler. And I had a quilt that I was working on that there were these like big triangles that were part of like a star shape that I wanted to put switchbacks in, but I needed to put the switchbacks on the diagonal. And I straight up couldn't do it without a ruler. Like they just were so cattywampus. Because a long arm is essentially an XY axis, right? And so you have to move evenly along both axes in order to achieve a diagonal. It was not going well, right? It just was not going well. So I very quickly bumped into this necessity of learning how to use rulers. It took several more years before I finally bit the bullet and slowed down and took the time to learn how to quilt with rulers on my domestic. And looking back, I don't know why I waited. Right? For the longest time, I was like, I have a walking foot. I can just do my straight lines with a walking foot and then I'll do my free motion. And no, 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 no. It's so much easier to be able to do things with the ruler. Um, Once I started actually playing around with a ruler foot and a ruler, it was on my Juki at the time when I had my J150. It was a game changer for being able to cleanly move from one area of a quilt to another by stitching in the ditch. To add stitch in the ditch for accentuating certain parts of my quilt, for being able to do echoing around different shapes, and to reduce my overall thread breaks and the hassle of having to change my foot. It was a complete game changer. So it made more customized quilting so much smoother and saved me a lot of time and effort. All right, any questions about myth number one? Myth number one is all about, is ruler quilting right for me even if I'm not a long armer? And the answer is absolutely yes, it is. It's going to be a game changer no matter what machine you're working on. I'm going to take another sip of this coffee to give y'all time to type in the chat if desired. All right, keep those questions coming. I'm going to keep chatting because I just talk a mile a minute. I can't help myself. All right, myth number two. Quilting with rulers is an easy way to avoid learning free motion quilting. I am honestly shocked how often I hear this, that folks will come in and they're wanting to finish their own quilts. And I will begin to talk about something like intro to free motion quilting, right? The most, important foundational class we offer on quilting your own quilts. And the reaction is No, I'll just quilt with rulers. Like, I can't draw, I'm just gonna use rulers, okay? I think this myth is false, all right? Folks who, are wanting to use rulers because they're scared of free motion quilting, um, they prefer to just buy a bunch of specialty rulers to do FMQ-like shapes on their quilts. Um, and in reality, learning how to do a couple of basic free motion quilting motifs before you take up ruler quilting makes the whole process a lot easier because moving your quilt under your machine is moving your quilt under your machine, right? Knowing how to control that, knowing how to position your body. Those of you who took the ruler quilting challenge with me last week, we talked a lot about posture and about how to use your muscles strategically. So you're using larger muscle groups to control your quilt, how to sit up over your work so you have a better sense of control, to reduce things like fatigue and risk of injury, right? The other piece of this that I find kind of bewildering is that even if quilting with rulers comes easier to you, right? And I've had quite a few people give me that feedback that, they've been working on their free motion quilting skills for a while and then they start working with rulers and they're like, this feels easier to me. I actually like it better. I love that. I'm all for that. Um, but using rulers for all of your quilting is going to become quite expensive. And for a lot of us, that's not going to be very sustainable, right? Because if you are wanting to use rulers to create very customized organic designs on your quilt, you're going to need a specialty ruler for every single one, right? So being able to have some foundational free motion quilting skills and then build with some foundational ruler quilting skills, I think is the best of both worlds. It's going to allow you to be more picky about which rulers you invest in to focus on really getting the most out of the rulers you choose to invest in. And having built some of those free motion quilting skills is going to give you more options with your quilting. It's going to save you the money on those extra specialty rulers, and it gives you an opportunity to practice the moving around of your quilt without the added apparatus of a ruler. All right, myth number 3. Quilting with rulers is only for super experienced quilters. This is kind of the inverse of myth number 2, and I see a lot of folks kind of fall on this side of the fence, if you will. And I also think that this is false. Stitch in the ditch is a key skill for all quilters, right? Whether you are using um, whether you are using a domestic, whether you're using a long arm, whether you're trying to emphasize a specific area of the quilt, whether you're trying to just simply secure the quilting layers together, I think that learning the basics of ruler quilting is for absolutely everyone. I tend to be one of those quilters that thinks that, like, even if you don't have a lot of depth in a lot of areas, having a basic understanding of many skills is always advantageous, right? Because then fewer things feel totally and completely new, right? So even if you're someone, let's say you're someone who usually tends to prefer to even send out your quilts, right? Having a foundational FMQ knowledge, a foundational ruler quilting knowledge means if you're ever in a pinch and you need a quilt finished quickly, you have the skills to do that, right? So I'm a big fan of at every level, jump in and learn the things. And mastering stitch in the ditch with a ruler ASAP, I think is just number one priority when it comes to quilting with rulers. Um, Eva says that her quilting ruler is an eighth of an inch thick. So Eva, it's very possible that you have a low shank ruler. So low shank rulers are closer in thickness to a cutting ruler. Personally, they still make me a little bit nervous. I'm always a little bit worried that they're going to end up under the needle. But they're made that way because if you have a low shank machine, the way that your shank comes down in the back of your foot, if you have a regular height quilting ruler, your ruler will not be able to go back there. So it limits the portion of your foot that you can line the ruler up with. There's some ergonomic concerns about putting a ruler back there anyway, so I tend to avoid it as much as possible. But that's why they designed the low shank rulers that are a little bit thinner so they can go under a low shank machine, right? If you are working on a high shank machine, any future rulers that you buy, I would make sure that you're buying those thicker rulers. I just think they're safer, right? And we just really don't want needles in rulers or in fingers. Alicia says, I struggle with rulers. I need to practice more. I had a lot of folks give feedback that they find quilting with rulers a little bit easier than free motion quilting. I have not found that to be the case personally. What I have found is once you learn a couple of motifs with rulers, the rest tend to come pretty quickly because they're all kind of variation on the same theme, right? Because it's a lot of geometry, it's a lot of straight lines. You're just doing straight lines in a different order, right? But I find it to be a little bit more challenging because it's a whole nother thing to hold on to. So Alicia, especially if you're working on your long arm, um, and I don't know if you normally drive the long arm with one hand or two. I'm a one-handed driver on my long arm regardless. But even just having to concentrate on like, I need to hold this hand steady and I'm going to be actually putting pressure from the long arm up against this ruler and I have to keep it still, right? Holding that like body tension. Um, the other thing that I like do that has a, like a weirdly similar body tension is like bouldering, right? Of just like you're using like the two different sides of your body to create a sense of opposition. And I think it can be really tiring. I think it's a little bit of like a mind trip, right? Because you're having to think that through. So um, I love it. I think it's super achievable. I think it's helpful. But personally, yeah, I think adding that extra apparatus, it takes extra practice and it's a different set of muscle skills. This is why it's awesome for us to all practice learning new things, right? This is good for our brains. It's good for our bodies to be pushing and stretching ourselves in different ways. But I think that's part of why it's really great to have a class, to have a community that as you're working through that practice and doing that problem solving, you've got people to do it with. All right. So as I mentioned, you can certainly use rulers to create much more complex motifs like the incredible feathers of Bethany and Namish. But every confident ruler quilting rock star started with the basic skill of stitch in the ditch. Just like free motion quilting, I recommend you start with a basic toolbox and then add more designs as your skill and confidence grows. Because ultimately, action cures fear, right? So if you are here and you are curious about quilting with rulers, maybe you have some ruler quilting supplies, like it sounds like Eva does, but haven't taken that leap to actually use them. That's exactly what I'm here for, is to help get you started. The fear will quiet down as you get into action, and it will be amazing to see how quickly your skills grow. So, how can you become a confident ruler quilting rock star? I'm so glad you asked. And as you may have guessed, the answer, of course, is Ruler Quilting Academy, right? We have just barely scratched the surface today of some foundational things to know about quilting with rulers. But inside of Ruler Quilting Academy, I teach dozens of motifs and shapes and ways to quilt your quilts. It's a proven method covered in 8 weeks that lots of rock stars have already done and had amazing results. In fact, it's been really fun, especially for folks who have gone through and done some free motion quilting or maybe done free motion quilting academy. To see their skills just leap to the next level as they add the ability to add more geometric shapes. So Elizabeth is a great example. She says, I love your videos. You explain things clearly. You are inspiring. And I love that you sometimes have a bobble, but that you keep going because that means that I can too. Your Q&A sessions are fun and your enthusiasm is contagious. It's very important to me anytime that I teach that the imperfections show, right? Because we're all human. I had an amazing rock star come in yesterday that just went through the ruler quilting challenge with me. And we were talking about the fact that like teaching it live means that like if my thread breaks, everybody sees that, right? Like there's no editing that out when it's live. And even in our pre-recorded videos, like with RQA, leaving some of the things like that in, because on the one hand, it's really lovely that we can curate things for social media and it makes content and videos about quilting really fun to watch. But it means that if you have something that's going sideways or not working the way that you want, it can be really frustrating because it's hard to find answers when everybody's editing the imperfections out of the process, right? The process is sometimes messy, sometimes there's a bobble, but we talk about how to fix that and how to keep going. Mary says, I really enjoyed RQA and felt like I learned a lot. I took your introduction to rulers in 2021, and RQA took my skills to a new level. Look at those beautiful shapes on her little sampler there. I love how that turned out. So Ruler Quilting Academy, if you're familiar with Free Motion Quilting Academy, is set up really similarly. So you have lifetime access teaching you all the skills you need for successful ruler quilting from start to finish. We have 6 video units full of tips, tricks, and motifs from stitch in the ditch to complex clamshells and beyond. Excuse me. We host our classes on a platform called Kajabi. So you have a portal you log into. We drip the videos out week over week, and then you have lifetime access to them once they've been released. Also inside Kajabi, we have a community. So we have message boards where you can post pictures, where you can cheer for each other, where you can ask questions. And we collect those questions each week and we have a live Q&A. So you can get near real-time help with things like, I'm having trouble hanging on to my ruler. It's slipping all over the place. How do I blend ruler quilting with free motion quilting, etc. All right. We have a full color workbook and we have ongoing updates to the class. So this is one of our newer classes. So we're still on our first filming for this. We anticipate in the future having this professionally filmed, just like we did with FMQA. But whether we add content, add fresh videos, refilm everything, Once you're in the class, you are in and you get all of those updates included for free. So Ruler Quilting Academy is a full tuition payment of $247 or 3 payments of $85. It is an 8-week class. Enrollment is open until November 27th. And then the couple of days after that, like next week, we'll have a little new student orientation so you understand the schedule of the class, how to get logged into the course portal and to our class community. We'll talk about the supplies that you need so that those can make their way onto your holiday wish list. And then we'll hit a big pause button because the month of December is coming and it's going to be bonkers. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be magical. It's also going to be bonkers. So after we do a little new student orientation next week, we'll hit a pause button. We'll get our way through December and then we'll come back in the first couple of days of January, have a quick reorientation, and then kick off our first lessons that second week of January, which I had someone ask me the other day what that date was. Let me look. January 8th will be when our first lessons drop. So 8 weeks from that point will be the course. We have new lessons dropping each week. We have a couple of practice weeks at the end. And then, of course, we have a graduation. Eva says, my greatest problem is stitch control with the free motion. So if you're having issues with your stitch length being kind of all over the place, if you have one of those sliders on the front of your machine to adjust the speed of your machine, toggle it back a little bit. I usually am somewhere between like 50 and 75%, getting it to the point where I can just floor the pedal and move my hands accordingly. And I find that that can really help a lot. It still takes some practice, but it's a good place to start. Ruler Quilting Academy allows you to learn how to quilt with rulers from the privacy and comfort of your own home. It strategically teaches you how to use a core collection of rulers rather than asking you to buy the approximately 1 trillion available on the market. It's ready when you are, regardless of geography or time zone, with on-demand pre-recorded video lessons. So while our Q&As are live, all of the videos for the class itself are pre-recorded. They drip out on Mondays. And then for the Q&As, I'm live for those, and you can come and join me live and ask questions in real time. If because of time zones, etc., you know that that's not going to work, we always collect questions ahead of time too. And then there's a replay for the Q&A. So even if you can't join me live, you always get your questions answered. That's really important to me. Excuse me, because when I was learning how to quilt, a lot of what was available was just on YouTube and I had no support. So if I didn't understand something or if I got stuck on something, I didn't have a good way to reach anyone for help, right? And I don't want that to be the case for any of my quilting rock stars. Ruler Quilting Academy also connects you to other rock stars in training around the world so you can help and encourage each other. So just like we're on here live now, I'm so sorry, y'all. The air is so dry. And I have been struggling. Just like we're on now, y'all can connect with each other, be able to ask questions, jump into those message boards and encourage each other, share pictures, and it's just all around a fantastic time. Megan shares, I loved the permission to play. Great videos show us how to do each motif, but no firm requirement on how we had to use it in the final project. So those of you who are familiar with FMQA, you have 2 final projects in that class. You have your sampler, and then you have your whole cloth. We have just one final project inside of RQA, and it is a set of placemats. So I encourage you to quilt them as the set and then cut them apart and bind them, but it gives you an opportunity to practice using ruler work in backgrounds, in borders, in star points, and in the center of blocks. I really thought this would be difficult, but once I got going, it really isn't that hard. Practice is fun. You give us the confidence to push past our fears and get started. I really enjoyed this class, possibly even more than the free motion one. Megan, your project looks amazing. I love those placemats. And of course, here's Gail. Gail said, I loved learning how to use the rulers to make different shapes for backgrounds, fillers, and borders. I love Holly-Ann's realness in her teaching and her positive, encouraging attitude. I love all of her designs on this quilt. So it's actually the back of Gail's final project. And it is just phenomenal. I love how it turned out. And Beverly shares, I love Holly-Ann's enthusiasm and positivity, as well as her energy. Love being able to go back to each lesson to watch and practice a design. So if you are interested and you're excited about quilting with rulers, I would love for you to jump into Ruler Quilting Academy and become a ruler quilting rock star. I'm going to drop the link down in the chat. And Eva says, does the website Include tools needed. I do not have rulers. Yes, so we have an optional kit that once you sign up, you'll get an email about that. Um, and it allows you to kind of pick and choose which rulers that you want. You'll definitely want a ruler with a straight edge. We use the Amanda Murphy Every Angle ruler. And you'll want some curves. We use the Amanda Murphy Every Curve set. And then there's the optional Every Circle set. So every angle is one ruler, every curve is 3 rulers. The Every Circle set is 5 rulers, which makes it a little bit pricier. I love the circles for things like clamshells and continuous curves, which we do in the later portion of the course. You can do those with some of the curves in the Every Curve set. It requires a little bit more finagling just because of like the steepness of the curve on those rulers. So I prefer the circles, but we do make those optional because of the price point, right? And a big part of this for me is I want to make sure that you get the most out of the tools that you have and you don't buy a trillion tools and only use them each for one thing, right? So yes, we do have an optional kit. We've got panels included in that to just make the whole thing a whole lot easier. Absolutely. What other questions can I answer for y'all? Please drop them in the chat. Ruler quilting has been such a game changer for me because I love doing the most on my quilts. But when I do the most with just free motion quilting, it doesn't necessarily leave a whole lot of breathing room, right, in my quilts. So I love being able to mix the geometric and the organic designs. And I think the visual effect is just stunning, just absolutely stunning. If you are here and you have taken Free Motion Quilting Academy or you're in process of taking Free Motion Quilting Academy, this is absolutely your next step. If you are here and you've only dabbled in free motion, you absolutely can jump into this. If you're curious about quilting with rulers and you've never done any free motion, my recommendation would be to spend the month of December practicing and just getting used to moving a quilt around under a machine, not in a straight line. So that when we add that ruler in January, the handling is a little bit simpler. So yeah. Rockstars, thank you so much for your time this morning. I hope you are having a fabulous U.S. Thanksgiving weekend, special time with family and with friends. Again, as I mentioned at the top of our time together, we are so grateful for y'all. You very literally keep our doors open and our lights on. We appreciate you shopping small this holiday season, whether it's joining us in class or buying some fabric for your next project. If you are in the market for some more fabric or your next project, do be sure to check out our sale. All of the fabric notions and patterns in our store are 25% off this weekend at shop.strigandstory.com. Have a wonderful Saturday. I'll see y'all soon.